pila pa, yung mga driver buong araw, sayang yung oras natin na magnegosyo, magtrabaho, ba't di na lang natin i-automate, no? Yan ang sinasabi po ninyo.
Tama po kayo. Yung sistema pong ginagamit nila ngayon, wala po kaming pinagkaiba doon sa nanlilimos na kailangan ibaba muna yung bintana bago kami bigyan ng limos. Ganun po ang nangyayari sa amin. Ganun kabigat. Kami yung direktang pumasan ng bigat. Meron na po ba rito sa session hall na to na kayang pasanin yung losses na 1,500 pesos
Per
a
day.
day? 45 to 50,000 pesos on a monthly basis. Meron po ba rito na pwedeng magsakripisyo sa atin noon? Wala. Mamang tsuper lang po ang nakakapagsakripisyo niyan.
Okay. Sir Mar, tatanungin ko lang ang DSWD. Ito pong, alam naman ho natin, no, na pag-uusapan natin ang transport workers, sila ang pinakaunang natatamaan dito. Agricultural workers, MSMEs, susunod-sunod po yan, no? Pero sila po yung pinakauna. Ito pong request nila ay sana mas efficient, mas diretso, no? Yung tulong. Iba pang usapan yung kung magkano. Kasi yung binibigay natin, hindi rin naman yan nagmamatch dun sa losses nila. Diba? Mas maliit yan sa kanilang nawalang income. But I just want to ask this question as my final question. Yung sinasabi po nila, kasi sa palagi ko po, hindi naman to one time eh. Ang expectation natin, this will last 3 to 6 months or more. Kahit matigil yung gera tomorrow, bukas, yung taas ng presyo, nandyan pa rin yan ng ilang buwan eh. So, kailangan natin silang matulungan. Ito pong pag-automate or pagkaroon ng fleet card, pwede po ba itong gawin para hindi na po sila kailangan pumila para sa ayuda, mabibigay po yung tulong. At the same time, kung magkano yung nabibigay, na ma-manage nyo rin po. Is that in the plans of DSWD?
Your Honor, gusto lang po namin sanang malaman kung ano yung tinutukoy niyang ayuda. Kasi as you know, dalawa po kami nagbigay ng ayuda. Kami po sa DSWD, cash relief assistance po ang binigay namin. At diretso po yun sa mga drivers.
Cash or diretso sa GCash? Or
Cash po.
Cash talaga, okay.
At base naman po sa mga news reports, napakabilis. Sobrang bilis nga po kasi pupunta ka doon kung ikaw ay na-vet na yung listahan mo. Hindi po dapat pumupunta yung hindi wala sa listahan. Okay? So, kaya po dapat malinaw, sa amin po, hindi po totoo yung 21% na accomplishment. So sa amin po, pag malinis yung listahan, dumating yung mga kasama natin driver, babayaran po sila. At yan naman po ay matter of judicial notice.
Sige, papaklaro natin kay Mar, no? Ito po bang release ng pondo ay mula sa DSWD, DOTR, LGU? Sino po ba yung nagbigay po ng tulong po sa inyo?
Mr. Chair, nakakatawa po. No? Magkatabi pa po sila eh. Ang DOTR at ang DSWD, hindi po ba sila nag-uusap kung yung ibibigay po sa amin eh, kung saan po ba ito galing? Hiningan po kami ng listahan ng LTFRB. Isinabmit po namin yung mga master list po namin. Yun pala, ibibigay din po pala sa LGU. Doble ang ginawa po nilang pahirap sa amin. Kailangan namin ng ORCR, pipicturean kami, kasama yung jeepney namin, hawak namin yung driver's license, kasama yung prangkisa, kasama pa po kung saan presinto kami bumoboto. Mr. Chair, totoo po yan at may mga ebidensya po kami. Kung saan po kukunin, hindi po dapat kami yung tinatanong. Hindi po ba? Kayo yung nakakaalam kasi kayo yung magbibigay. Tama po
Okay,
ba?
Mr. Valbuena, but gusto ko lang kasing matukoy ito, no? Of course, alam natin magkaiba rin yung pondo nila eh. And kami yung pumupondo po dyan. Kaya gusto namin malaman kung anong pondo yung nagang maayos. Diba, sino po mismo yung nagbibigay sa inyo? Para lang klaro sa amin.
Ang namigay po kahapon, ang kasama ng LGU, ang DSWD. Pero una po kaming pinag-submit ng listahan sa LTFRB.
Okay, so ito yung sinasabi namin na kailangan yung response ng gobyerno, iisa lang talaga. No? This is a common theme from Tuesday na alam ko may kanya-kanya kayong mga responsibilidad, pondo at lahat, but we need to have a consolidated approach here. No? Posibleng nagdodoble yung tulong o posibleng akala natin nasa kabilang listahan, yun pala wala sa listahan. We need to have a consolidated approach here. No? So, Mr. Chairman, baka maganda po yung komite, pwedeng i-meet on the side yung mga agencies at yung transport workers natin, maklarify natin yung expectation nila kung ano yung makukuha, magkano yung makukuha, ano yung proseso para malagay sa listahan, ano yung proseso sa pagtanggap ng pera. Kasi kahit yung pagtanggap ng pera, posibleng nakakaantala dun sa pang-araw-araw na pamamasada po nila. So, Mr. Chairman, can the committee convene this on the side?
We can, ang balak ko talaga namin magkaroon ng mga technical working groups bawat sector, no? Kasi iba-iba yung pangangailangan, we'll get more details. Pero just to comment on that, kaya kailangan ng isang cohesive national contingency plan dahil nagbibigay yung DSWD ng ayuda, nagbibigay si DOTR, LTFRB ng pantawid pasada, pero parehong tulong yun. No? At ako, kung tatanungin, pinaka-effective pa rin ay yung fuel subsidy na diretso sa card. Kasi gagamitin ng tao yan sa pangkarga ng fuel, hindi gagamitin yan sa ibang bagay. Yung cash nakakatulong pero hindi natin alam kung saan gagastusin. Unlike yung fuel subsidy, diretso na. At yan ang ginagawa na matagal na. Ilang dekada na natin ginagawa yan. No? So, but we'll pursue that later on. Go ahead, Mr. Valbuena.
Opo, meron pong 2.5 billion pesos ang DOTR na para sa fuel subsidy. Tama rin po si ASEC o USEC ng DSWD. Alin po doon ang pinagkuhanan po natin. So gusto rin namin malinawan kung makakakuha pa po ba kami sa DOTR doon sa 2.5 billion o doon sa AIC. So ano po ito? Kaya po kami nagtatanong.
Kaya nga dapat ano talaga yan ay nag-usap yung gobyerno, no. At yung pantawid pasada nakadesenyo talaga yan, even yung special provision para sa fuel subsidy, no. At yan ang mas magandang mekanismo dahil diretso yan doon sa fuel card, no. So with that, Senator Lauren, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Salamat, Mr. Valbuena. Ramdam namin ang iyong mga sinabi at lahat ng mga sabi niyong pumila ng napakainit tapos wala naman natanggap. At inuutos ng komite with the permission of the chair na sagot po ng maayos in a memo form kasi hindi maliwanag. Tama si Mr. Valbuena, saan nanggaling yung pondo? DOTR ba na 2.5B or DSWD na AIX? Hindi natin alam, mas malaki yon para malaman nila at bakit hindi yung buong listahan at ilang porsyento lang nakatanggap. Kung hindi kaya ng mga ASEC, USEC director na nandito ngayon, pero kailangan mabigyan natin ng sagot ang grupo ng Manibela from Mr. Valbuena. 12:19, siguro naman bago bumaba ang araw ngayong araw na ito, ay masasagot tayo ng DOTR, LTFRB na nagbigay ng listahan at ng DSWD. Can I ask that, Mr. Chair, base sa question ni Senator Bam Aquino? I mean, it's not ask, it's a demand kasi hindi siya nasagot ng kompleto dahil hindi sila sigurado saan nanggaling yung pondo. DOTR, DSWD, or LGU at bakit yung iba hindi nakatanggap. Wag muna ito sa time ko dahil kino-continue ko lang yung sinasabi ni Senator Bam Aquino. Pero ramdam po namin ang paghihirap po at yung buod ng inyong mensahe. At bago matapos ang hearing ay dapat may sagot na ang ahensya ng gobyerno na inyong binanggit. Salamat po. Ngayon, bumalik po tayo, nabanggit ni Senator Marcoleta kanina, yung replacement cost. Kung sino man ahensya ng gobyerno ang sasagot nito, it would be perhaps DOE, my friend Yusek Wimpy again, or would it be DOF? Simple. Tama ba na yung replacement cost method in pricing allows the oil companies to impose the current world prices despite their present stocks? Alam ko, ito'y napag-usapan, narinig ko, pero parang hindi ba maliwanag yung sagot? At ano pang ibang mga maaring paraan or viable methods bilang alternatibo dito para yung pass-on sa mga consumers ay hindi immediate or hindi mangyari. So, gusto kong maintindihan yan dahil nung March 9, ang DOE ang nagpaliwanag tungkol dito sa lumang stock. Sabi nga nila, replacement cost. Kahit dumating na dito ang presyo ay hindi price ng date of delivery, pero yung practice daw, kinocompute yung historical average at ina-assume na yung cost sa pagbili ng bagong stock. Yun yung sinabi ng DOE bilang paliwanag sa basis ng replacement cost. So, gusto ko pong maintindihan ito dahil sa pagsaliksik ko naman ay hindi dapat ginagamit ang replacement cost. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because my Supreme Court decision na nagsabi, na nag-rule na yung replacement cost is an invalid substitute for fair value and is almost meaningless number in the economic and accounting sense. The use of replacement cost as a methodology for computing the value of assets, goods, and services has been shunned by the Supreme Court. So, pakipaliwanag po, babanggitin ko yung GR number, hindi ko na sana, ito, 226443, GR number. Saan yung case? I have the GR 226443.
It's National Association of Electric Consumers for Reforms Incorporated
Yes.
versus ERC.
Yes. So, since Yusek Fuentebalia knows this, paliwanag po nyo yung replacement cost ba? Okay, since you went on the microphone, Yusek Wimpy, you can explain because it was a DOE that explained the replacement cost in behalf or justifying. So in short, yung stocks na bili nung hindi nung krisis, ibang presyo. Pero nung dumating yung krisis, may stock na siya sa dating presyo, pero inaakma sa presyo na tumaas sa world prices dahil daw bibili naman nila yung kapalit sa mahal na presyo sa mga darating na linggo. So, ang sagot muna ng DOE, ang gusto ko marinig, tapos DTI or DOF, pwede ba kayong sumagot? At PNOC at ang pribadong sektor. DOE muna. Please answer. Yusek Fuentebalia.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, I'm not certain of the replacement cost as practiced before the electricity and that of the oil companies. But, okay.
Konsepto ito. At saka, I am quoting the DOE, Yusek Wimpy. It was yung secretary mo na wala dito ngayon ang nagsabi, and I quote, kaya nga sinabi ko na hindi namin statement to. It's the replacement cost. Kahit dumating na dito ang crudo, ang presyo niyan ay hindi price ng date of delivery, pero as a practice now, we compute the historical average of the week. Yun ang ina-assume na cost na pagbili ng bagong stock. So, yun po ay quotation po ayon po sa DOE, kaya kayo po ang pinakamataas na representante dito, my good friend Yusek Wimpy, pakipaliwanag po para maintindihan po naming lahat. Kasi may computation of distribution rates then, and the Supreme Court said, and I quote, "It is difficult to justify and almost irrational to use the replacement cost in the valuation of the asset base of utilities." Anyway, alam mo yan, you're a lawyer, you would know this. So, gusto natin maintindihan kung pinagbabawal pa ng Supreme Court yung replacement cost issue, pero yun ang ginawang justification o dahilan po ng DOE sa pagtaas ng presyo.
Yeah.
Oo. DOE first and then DOF?
Okay.
Yeah, then the private sector. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the question, ma'am. So number one, as I mentioned, it's an electricity case that was decided by the Supreme Court. So how it differs from the oil companies, I have to study further. Number two, okay. So second, ma'am, the way I understand the practice, whether or not it is fair that if there will be lower prices at that was purchased, no, yung sabihin natin,
Sorry, you'll answer later. Wait. While the Supreme Court case was on electricity, the DOE position, as I read into the record, was used. Ginamit po yun ng DOE, ang inyong sekretarya, para po ipaliwanag yung replacement cost at presyo ng oil companies. So, yun po ang gusto kong i-address po yung sagot. Hindi po ako nagsasabi
Ayan.
na ito sa kuryente, hindi to pwedeng ma-apply dito, ginamit na po ng inyong departamento. Thank you.
I recall the answer of the secretary utilizing the replacement cost as a concept in explaining what is happening. So the way I understand it po, because I'm not the accountant, no? Yung week 1, nag-purchase sila halimbawa ng 100 pesos per item. And then week 2, naging 150 pesos po yun. So, ang binibenta nila on week 2, pero nandun na sa kanila yung stocks. For week 1 na binayaran ng 100, binibenta po nila, basis nila is 150, plus yung may income sila ng konti, no? Or meron silang margin na tinatawag nila. Pero pag bumaba naman po, for week 2, 150, binili naman nila yung pang-replace. Tapos week 3, naging 100. So, bibenta nila yung kanilang produkto sa 100 at week 3 plus marginal cost. So, yun po yung situation during normal business operations. Ang sinasabi po ng Department of Energy, we may need to tweak or have something in the middle because the increase is for gasoline, it went to almost 99% or 100%, and sa diesel po, almost 150%. So yun po yung kakaiba na tinitingnan natin. And yun rin po yung naging basis ng Department of Energy to talk to the oil companies on whether they can give more discounts because of that very high discrepancy. What is probably also hindering them from giving more discounts because mataas nga po talaga, so magbabakbakan sila sa ground kung paano nila gagawin yun, is their uncertainty of getting more supply because the supply from 150 may increase or decrease depending on the statements of the President of the United States or the statements or what's happening on the ground. So there are a lot of speculation by the hour. Yun po.
Ang interpretasyon nyo nung March 9 statement ng inyong kawani. Pero ang tingin ko po, hindi pa to... Hindi ba to unfair sa ating mga consumers? Wala pang pagtaas ng mga binili, pero tinataas at sinisingil na sa consumers. Hindi naman po tayo insurer ng risk ng mga pribadong kumpanya. I just feel it's unfair kasi binili naman yon sa regular na presyo, hindi naman sa panahon ng krisis nung mataas na. Hindi naman tayo insurer ng risk eh. Yun ang risk nung pribadong sektor. Nagkaroon ng February 28 na surprise attack eh. Pero, so, yun ang position ninyo. So in short, sang-ayon po at dinedefend po ng DOE yung pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin na binili ng murang presyo nung wala pa yung gera. So, yes, Yusek Limpi.
Not necessarily, ma'am. Because what we mentioned is we only explained how business operates under normal circumstances. In fact, the position of the DOE is if we have very extraordinary circumstance, we may have to tweak the oil deregulation law because what the DOE is doing is asking oil companies to have more discounts and the like, no? Yung sinasabing gradual or staggered price increases because we have computed na sobrang laki nga po ng diferensya ng pagbili sa week 1 to week 2. So yun po yung napag-usapan and we submitted that position as well, that we may need to tweak under extraordinary circumstances po.
Meron bang provision, di ba? Anyway, I won't get to that. So, kung ang oil companies, and I will give you a chance to explain, if the oil companies are quick to apply the higher prices due to the so-called concept of replacement cost, ang DOE ba may pag-uugnayan, koordinasyon sa kanila para ganun din kabilis ibaba pag ang world market naman dips in prices, di ba? Ang bilis kasi ginamit yung replacement cost, pag bumaba naman ang world price, hopefully soon, kung mangyayari, anong koordinasyon o mekanismo ang ginagawa ng pamahalaan ng gobyerno to protect naman the consumer? Mabilis pagtaas, pagbaba ng world prices. Ano ang inyong mekanismo?
So under the law right now, yung price is deregulated. Now, ang ginagawa ng Department of Energy on the consumer welfare promotion aspect is to make sure that consumers would compare these prices. So yung number one na paraan dyan is the price board. We require na yung price board ay naka-display sa ating mga gasolinahan and it
Yes,
is
you can
faithful to what is really being implemented doon sa pump. Number two, we emphasize as well that the price board can be digitalized. So there are consumer apps that are available that can compare prices on the app. I mentioned before in some of our conferences with the press that Waze, for example, has that feature na pwedeng pagbiyahe ko from the Senate to the Department of Energy, yung mga gasolinahan doon, pwede ko po siyang makita what are the mas mura and what is mas mahal. And yun po yung paraan para ma-protection natin sila. Because the design under the oil deregulation law is they will be able to compete as to prices wherein doon naman sa quantity at quality, that's where the regulation of the Department of Energy comes in po. So, under extraordinary circumstances, we may need to have something in the middle before we reach Section 14E of the oil deregulation law. Yun po yung para mga tweaking and probably triggers na dapat makita natin so that there will be no discretion. Yun po yung sinubmit namin.
Sinubmit nyo? Ito na naman tayo, sinubmit ha?
Hindi, yun po
Baka
yung-
sasabihin na naman yung sinubmit tapos break kami kaya
Hindi naman po.
sinubmit na gusto nyong reforma
No breaks allowed
sa
ngayon,
batas.
ma'am. Oo.
Reforma?
Opo. Yes po. Yung
Nasaan
reforma.
Saan nyo sinubmit?
Hindi, yun po yung sa pag-ano natin.
Isasubmit?
Yung po yung talakayan natin 2 days ago. Ganun po siya. Anita.
Okay.
Opo.
Pag
Yun
sinabi
po-
nyong sinubmit, pakipaliwanag po
Yeah.
na sinubmit nyo at kanino, sa komite, sa chair, sa... Oo. Submit mo na officially.
The statements na sinumitin namin
you submit.
during...
Okay,
yeah.
clear. Para maliwanag tayo. Tika, meron daw intervention pero you have my time. Yes. Hello. You said you would intervene. Papayag ako. Konektado po dito.
Thank you, Madam.
Hindi, time ko pa. Pero...
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Opo.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yusek Wimpy, Mr. Chair, I believe I have a fair level of intelligence. But I cannot understand your reasoning when my colleague, Senator Ligar, is asking you about the concept of replacement cost. Ang sabi mo, it is a practice. Is it a practice or malpractice?
It is the practice during normal circumstances and we can also ask them to validate.
Now, we are now in an emergency.
Yun.
But the oil companies, as you have heard them, they raise their prices even if the inventory is still there. I already computed it. Hindi ko na uulitin, Mr. Chair. The gross income approximately using this replacement cost is 3 billion pesos per day. Narinig ko yung panaghoy ni Mr. Balbuena. Pasensya ka na, Mr. Balbuena, kung gagamitin ko yung panaghoy. Halos maglupasay na siya. Kaming lahat naniniwala kami doon sa kanilang kinalalagyan ngayon. But unless and until we are able to decipher the problem of whether or not the replacement cost is the answer, 3 billion per day ang kinikita nila on their own admissions of the level of consumption of per month of diesel and gasoline. So did the DOE check this? How far did you monitor this?
Sagot, if they checked it, and yeah. Please answer, chinek ba ito ng DOE at kailan nyo sinimulang
After
i-check?
2 weeks, ma'am, after 2 weeks, 127% increase per liter in diesel, 67% in gasoline. After 2 weeks, pero ang ginagamit is the inventory. How do you justify that? Tapos sabi ninyo kanina, meron kayong monitoring. How did you monitor?
Pakisagot.
Sabi niyo you monitor even the abuse of market power. So you have to explain. You have to justify how did they increase their prices using
please
this
answer
inventory.
That. Sabi rin ng chair, ang minomonitor lang daw nyo ay yung volume, hindi yung price. So pakisagot yung sabi ng chair, volume lang ba, hindi presyo? Nag-monitor kayo ayon kay Senator Marcoleta? Kailan kayo nagsimula? Talaga bang 2 weeks later, noon nandiyan na ang krisis at mataas na? At anong klaseng monitoring ang ginawa nyo? Pinapanood sa kanyang computer. Yun na naman. Oo.
Okay. So, number one, we again stated, no, na under extraordinary circumstances, there's really that gap that we need to address. Because kung presyo ang pag-uusapan, oil deregulation law is there. So we need something in the middle precisely to protect our constituency. That's number one. Number two, yung...
Andali.
Sorry po.
Ito lang ha, rules natin. Ahensya ng gobyerno. Huwag po nyo gagawin dahilan na kailangan ng isang bagong panukulang batas o amendahan ng batas bago tayo makagalaw sa panahon ng emergency para matulungan ang mga tao. Please, favor lang, huwag po nyong gagawin dahilan yan. At maliwanag, binanggit na rin ni Senator Marcoleta, may Section 14 naman ng Oil Deregulation Law. In times of national emergency, when the public interest so requires, a DOE may, during the emergency and under reasonable terms prescribed by it, temporarily take over. We're not saying take over. Direct the operation of any person or entity engaged in the industry. So, nandyan. So, ayaw naman natin gawin yan. Hindi ko po sinasabing gawin yan. Pero hindi naman nyo kailangan pang isumite ang amendments to the oil deregulation para kayo makagalaw. Hindi po, dahil meron ng itong tawagin na natin extreme measure. So if that is allowed by the law, so the temporary or in between is therefore allowed. So there's no need to use a new law which will take months, if not years, idedebate, wag po niyong gagawing dahilan ang Kongreso. Okay? Having said that, repeat, gusto po namin malaman anong monitoring ang ginawa ng DOE, kailan kayo nagsimula, ito ba lang, ayon sa chair, ay volume lang or presyo? At kung na-monitor nyo yung presyo, anong klaseng koordinasyon o kinonvene nyo lahat ng consumer groups, transport sector, manibela, etc., producers, retailers, etc.? Pakipaliwanag po. Thank you.
So, laying the premise na number two, paano po natin siya minomonitor, no? That's why we mentioned that even if nandun siya sa oil deregulation law and meron tayong section 14E, what we are utilizing is the certificate of compliance na pinapatupad ng ating mga oil companies. And these certificates of compliance have conditions na nandoon. Yung po, doon po sinasabi natin, why do we have the COC? Kasi merong responsibilidad ang ating mga nagbebento ng petroleum products na mas mataas po, hindi po siya ordinaryong binibenta. So the certificate of compliance is what we used when we went to the ground for them to mention. Even if meron tayong problem sa price na gray area, sabihin na lang natin, we all told them under the show cause order, bakit ganito kataas ang inyong siningil? So yun po yung number one. And they have,
Salamat sa inyong tugon. Kailan po nangyari yung number 1 na yan? February 28 nangyari yung surprise attack. Feb 28, no?
Yeah.
Kailan po ginawa ng DOE at ilang pulong na po? Ayan. Ilang pulong na po? Isang buwan na, Kailan po nagsimula?
so yung
2
minention,
weeks later or immediately? Kailan po?
okay. So, when this was all ongoing, ang monitoring po ng Department of Energy, Oil Industry Management Bureau, headed by Director Abad, is every day on the prices.
Yung pulong, ang tinatanong
And then-
yung monitor, madali mag-monitor sa telepono, sa kwarto. Kasi puwapasok kayo, di ba sabi nyo, once a week lang kayo puwapasok na face-to-face. O sige, yan ang desisyon nyo. Sa buong gobyerno, ha, ang Department of Energy, sa inyo nang galing yon, I work from home, pero once a week kayo puwapasok sa tanggapan. Okay? So, once a week lang daw. Di ba yun ang hearing natin? Minsan lang, hindi si Wimpy everyday daw. Okay, masipag yan. Once a week, isang beses lang puwapasok. Sabi nila, kasi yun ang formula nila sa work from home. Sa inyo nang galing yan, hindi sa akin. Natuklasan ko nung hearing. Okay, so sa inyong once a week na work from home, once a week na work face-to-face at yung ibang work from home, mula nung February 28 po pumutok yung gera, kailan po yung inyong koordinasyon sa lahat po ng mga ahensya at pribadong sektor?
Okay. So, nung nangyari na po yun, yung gera, ang minention ko also in the last hearing po is naghati po kami ng mga trabaho. Sa akin na po napunta yung pagko-coordinate sa ground tulad ng DILG, PNP. So, yun po yung messaging natin noong March 4, binanggit ko at 8:06. We already coordinate, ng gabi po. We coordinated with Secretary Remulla and spoke to Yusek Iringan at 8:22 p.m. Yung DILG staff po, March 5, 7:10 a.m., we asked them to organize a meeting with the local chief executives on how we can provide the necessary coordination and monitoring, considering na 1,000 lang po yung mga trabahador ng Department of Energy. It's around 1,000 to 1,200 po. Ngayon po, yung sa mga pulis naman po, kay Chief PNP Nartates, that was March 6, 2026, 9:10 p.m. po yun. So, Director for Operations, nakontak ko po kasi kami muna ni Chief ang nag-exchange ng text messages. March 7, 11 a.m., yun na po yung kay Director Peñones. And then, doon po sa Saturday, instructions rin po ni Secretary na kontakin yung grupo ni Secretary Aguda sa DICT para yung consumers po magkaroon ng...
Yusek, Wimpy, alam namin ikaw nagtatrabaho at yung iba dyan. O, sige. Okay na po muna. Okay na yan. Yes. Okay ka na. Hindi ka pa kumbinsado, no?
Wala ka ng oras eh.
Yes. Hindi, sagot niya yung mahaba eh.
Sino na?
Sandali lang.
Ako na.
Wala pa ako naitatanong. Sa oil companies about the replacement cost. Thank you, Yusek Wimpy. Paano po nyo ipapaliwanag? Can you answer the question? The government side, they answered it and they said that to defend the private sector in increasing the prices even if it was old inventory. May we hear?
Ma'am Senator, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The business model of Petron is very different. We import crude, we do not import finished products. Only on occasions where there is a sudden increase in the need for products, that is when we respond and import. So our crude deliveries come from the Middle East and they come according to a laycan when they are supposed to load from the Middle East and shipped here. After about 21 days, they arrive and they are unloaded. So about weekly, we receive parcels of about 2 million barrels a day or 2 million barrels per load. So that's the business model. Now, as far as pricing is concerned, whatever is the pricing in the market, we have to compete. Because our dealers will not be able to sell if their prices are above the prices of competition. And so we need to position ourselves to be able to sell the products. We are mindful of the requirements of our dealers so that they have a payback for whatever investment they had put into a service station. So that is the model. Thank you, ma'am.
If I may, likewise, I think this replacement costing is the standard practice for all commodity products around the world for 100 years. And there is a reason of doing that. We may imagine if we are the gold seller. We bought the gold last week at $100. Today the gold is $150. What will happen if I sell it at 100? Everyone will come and buy from me. That will generate the peak demand. So the supply or the inventory will be short. Next, if I buy at 100 today, next week is $100. Can I sell at 100? I cannot. Come back to the first scenario. If I sell at 100, which is the acquisition cost of last week, will I have the cash flow to buy the inventory in order to continue the business? I may not. So this is the principle or the practice of all commodity products around the world. This discussion is happening in all markets. There is, what I can say, this is the practice that all markets are doing. And in the case that there is any market try to deviate from that, that may create the imbalance of the supply chain for the whole world.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers.
I'll just ask on round two. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
We appreciate your candor and your honesty, but my seatmate is still not content with the answers. But thank you.
Yeah, I also have the same observations, and I'll propound my questions later on. So we'll recognize Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Anyway, the DOE probably can answer this, or any from the economic team. The President has already declared a state of national energy emergency under Executive Order number 110 under the Oil Deregulation Law. It states that in times of national emergency, when the public interest so requires, the DOE, during the emergency and under reasonable terms prescribed by it, temporarily take over or direct the operation of any person or entity engaged in the industry, Section 14E. So my question, Mr. Chair, is may I ask what is the course of action of DOE with respect to exercising its power under the law?
So even before the declaration of the emergency, we were already using the principles of the second, the lighter, kasi or po siya, di ba? Yung isa, take over. Yung isa, or direct the operation. So nandun po tayo sa gitna, yung direct the operation. Kasi ang ginagamit po natin dyan is the police power, and it's not more on eminent domain. So dun po sa police power na tinabanggit natin, we looked for other legal principles and basis kung paano po ma-address yung objective. The objective is to keep gasoline stations on and make sure that the supply is available and it can be affordable. Yun po yung second issue. So doon po sa Certificate of Compliance, nandun po yung mga conditions that nandoon din na pwede kaming magpadala ng show cause order sa kanila if we see any violation under the Certificate of Compliance. And yung Certificate of Compliance, when I explain this po doon sa ating mga local chief executives, parang kapareho po siya ng business permit po. Ganun po siya. So, yun din po yung ginagamit kong legal basis for the local chief executives. Kasi sa DOE, COC, sa kanila, pwedeng business permit. Pagkausap ko naman po yung mga police, ang gagamitin naman po nila, halimbawa nagtanong sa atin, ano yung pwedeng gawin pag naglagay sa container na hindi safe. Fire code po yung ginagamit nila. Putting hazardous materials in unsafe containers. So we are exercising different laws but we have the same objective. It is to show presence on the ground that government is there. And government is balancing everything so that under extraordinary circumstances, no national emergency yet, we are already showing our faces and telling everybody, we need to calm down, we have sufficient supply, the prices are going up, but we need to work together to keep the supplies flowing. And so it is a very delicate act. So we are in that gray area because in extraordinary circumstances, the Department of Energy believes that we exercise more police power. So nandun po kami sa being aggressive on the ground and being aggressive also in making sure, as mentioned by our guests here, that we are also helping in ensuring the supply. So nandyan rin po yung iba't ibang mga solusyon. Kasi sabi natin, the 1973 experience already taught us a lot. It's not only on the game of supply, but also on demand side management. And we're also emphasizing that the solutions does not only go with supply and demand on petroleum products. We also are looking at what are the impacts on the other fuels and what other technologies are available para magamit po natin yun. So doong panahon, 1973, hindi pa kami pinapanganak ni Senator Win kasi 75. So, ang nangyari, ikaw 74. So, noon po, hindi available masyado yung tinatawag natin mga induction cooking for LPG. Hindi rin po masyadong available yung electric vehicle. So, what are we saying? Why are we mentioning this? Because yung merkado, para matanggal yung worry natin ng konti. Of course, it's uncertain.
Wow, isang kain.
Tricycle papunta sa 1 kilometrong pupuntahan, naglalakad or nagbibisikleta. Or nagkakaroon ng ibang mode. Yun po yung diversion or... So, yan po nangyayari sa buong mundo. So, halimbawa po, sabihin ng na-mention kanina, China. Nagsabi ng China, nag-hold temporarily ng kanilang pagbibitaw ng supply. Ano naman ang naging behavior sa China? Marami silang electric vehicle doon, so magbabawas din ang demand doon. But it takes time for the market to adjust. Doon naman po sa supply, kung demand po yun, so magsasabihin naman China, bukas na naman kami. Sabihin naman natin yung sa supply, hindi lang naman po kasi galing sa Middle East yung sa ating supply. As mentioned, 16% galing Strait of Hormuz, etc. So, nag-a-adjust din po yung ibang pwedeng magbigay ng supply na dadagdagan nila yon. Of course, gusto nating makalaya yung mga na-hostage doon, na na-hostage yung buong mundo. But yung pagka-hostage ng buong mundo, hindi pareho noon sa ngayon. Dahil may teknolohiya tayo. And kung mag-spin off siya sa power, nandun rin po yung mukha ng pamahalaan para masiguro na we ensure supply and price is addressed. Yun po yung tinatawag nating game plan. Although it's not perfect, that's why we really appreciate, protect, we really appreciate the coordinations ongoing. We can still improve as we go along. It's really a matter of getting the right data. That's why we emphasize, if you get a show cause order, please give us the right data because what we want to build here is trust and confidence and fairness. No favoritism, no hoarding because we have sufficient supply. Even if sabihin natin hanggang April lang yan, hanggang May, puno na nga yung tangki. Almost puno yung, hindi naman puno, nandun tayo sa storage capacity, malapit siya dun. for gasoline and diesel. Ang sinasabi natin, we're uncertain kung ano yung mangyayari sa next orders natin. So we help each other there. At the same time, the global market po is adjusting po. Yun lang po yung pwede nating maisumiti sa ngayon po.
Yes, thank you, Yusek Montebella. Pero ang tanong ko lang kasi, Mr. Chair, ano po yung epekto doon ng pagkakadeklara ng State of National Energy Emergency, the passage of EO 110 declaring, ayun na, kung ang DOE, parang nabanggit nyo po kasi, parang it's you're exercising the same measures, no? Prior to the declaration, kasi state of national emergency tayo ngayon, crisis. So what are the extraordinary powers now that can be exercised the President to deal with the present situation? Yun po yung gusto ko malaman. For example, does the President now have the power to dictate on temporary ceilings or control of the retail price of fuel? Ito yung concern ni Senator Marcoleta, Senator Legarda. So what can be immediately be implemented under a state of national energy emergency? Yun lang siguro yung what's the difference, kasi yung nabanggit nyo kanina, I think it's the proper, yun po yung talagang trabaho ng DOE, no? Procedures to make sure that everything is done right, monitoring, pero what we need to know, yung mga kababayan natin, kung ano yung extraordinary powers that can be exercised now by the President and the agencies.
Okay po. So yung ginagawa po namin, tama po yung nabanggit ni Senator Gatchalian, the chair earlier, no? It's now more of agencies more coordinated and working together. And that is the uplift that's organized by the executive.
That's after the crisis committee has been formed, no? Meron na tayong uplift. Wow, we should be acting with urgency already. So when is the first meeting of the committee?
As I believe it's scheduled tentatively Tuesday or Wednesday, as I was informed by Director Abad po.
Well, we were talking earlier, nag-uusap kami ni Senator Gatchalian, kasi po kami po yung dating mga local government officials that in times of emergency or calamity, we should have acted, we act right away. In this case, we should have acted yesterday. Di ba? Sabi, we cannot wait anymore. No? Mamaya may papakita akong video about the current situation ng ating mga tao on the ground. But I know that Yusek Montebella, just like me, we are a rider, you ride to work, no? Although we are not, sabi natin hindi tayo poor, but we also experience the same situation. Alam natin yung init, alam natin yung maulunan, alam natin yung matraffic na yung lahat ng init, yung buga na usok, nararamdaman natin yan. So, sana nga lang kung lahat ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno, ng heads, tulad mo, nararamdaman yung nararamdaman ng na experience sa ordinaryong tao. No? We are grounded, no? Swerte tayo, no? Sa rider, alam po natin yan. Yan po, kung titignan niyo po yung pictures, no? Yesterday sa Commonwealth, meron pang iba yan, with the lack of transportation, kasi iba nga ayaw nang bumiyahe dahil sa taas ng diesel. Iba-ibang there are other similar images, no? Na ganito. Sabi nga, Mr. Chair, tayo pong mga nasa opisina, tayo pong nasa mga ahensya, maaring pwede tayong mag-antay, pwede tayong magtiis, pero itong mga tao, ilagay po natin ang lugar natin sa kanila, tignan nyo po yung araw-araw na dinadanas sila paghihirap. They cannot wait. That's why yun nga, we have to act with urgency. Pasensya na po, I'm not hitting the administration, kakampi ho tayo, especially in times of crisis. Kaya lang napansin ko, yung sense of urgency parang kulang sa ibang heads ng ating agencies, no? So sana magbago yung kanilang mindset with that. So siguro tanong ko na lang, Mr. Chair, kasama po ba dito yung pagtataas sa minimum required national fuel inventory? Kasi as the way I understand, ngayon 15 days. But we are already in crisis. We have to make sure that we have enough fuel buffer stock. We were not even sure kung how long this will last. Dapat siguro ang treatment natin dito, Mr. Chair, just like COVID times, that there was uncertainty, we did not know until when, until what extent, yung epekto ng crisis. So, kasama ba rito, dapat yung pag-increase ng minimum required national inventory kasi 15 days no. I think now dapat nasa 60 days or even more.
Thank you very much for bringing that up, Senator JV. No? Yung minimum inventory requirement po nga wala po yun sa batas. Inimposed lang po talaga yun ng Department of Energy. Kasi ang nakalagay lang po, the DOE shall maintain a periodic schedule of present and future total industry inventory. Yun po yung weakness also, and you have hit it on the nail, on the head, hit the nail on the head. When you mentioned the MIR that it should be there, it was not there actually po. Kailangan nga po talaga meron siya. At pangalawa, we have to also mention, the 15 days, what we have is times 3 of the minimum.
Siguro follow up lang, Yusek, probably you can answer. Hindi ho ba dapat, based on the 1973 experience, na nagkaroon tayo kahit paano, no? That time, I can remember there is, nagkaroon ng coupon, no? Although malit pa ako nun, 3 years old data ako nun. Naalala ko nun, may rationing nun, may coupons because of the oil crisis. Kumbaga, kinokontrol din yung gamit. No, yung paggamit, hindi lang yung supply but also the disposal of yung ating petroleum. So in this case, halimbawa kung 15 days, minimum ngayon 45 days sabi nyo, hindi ba dapat merong alert levels yan na kung umabot sa ganito, we will have to have rationing already, coupons, because our aim, I think, Mr. Chair, is to to conserve whatever resources or petroleum we have and hope for the best na talaga magkaroon ng resolution itong crisis. Wala sa control natin yan. But if it becomes, kung ito po ay humaba, kung ma-extend po ito na hindi rin natin alam hanggang kailan, ilang buwan, ang ano natin is to buy time and conserve whatever we have. Di ba dapat ginagawa na ng DOE yun na pag umabot ng 60 days, 45 days, umabot ng 30 days, kailan tayo dapat magkaroon ng rationing so that we can control whatever resources that we have?
So we totally agree, Senator JV. No, actually, I'm trying to look for the page in the book of Minister Velasco because we are looking at the 1973 experience, and they have there a rule of thumb. No, at that time, according to Minister Velasco on page 19, confronting the oil crisis on Trailblazing by Jeronimo Velasco. When crude oil prices jumped from $3 to $11 per barrel on January 1, 1974, we, them, required the minimum inventory of 60 days supply of crude and oil products. The rule of thumb was if the total country inventory is less than 60 days but not lower than 45 days, we impose rationing. That's according to him. Okay.
Yes, according to our chairman, sa Europe daw, meron ng nagre-rationing, no? By this time. So, I'm glad that it's under your nandun kay kay Secretary Velasco, Minister Velasco. Minister Velasco.
When you mentioned that,
yes.
You were
So
3
siguro
years.
I think the DOE could already dapat may alert levels sa tayo, no?
Yes, po.
Go ahead.
Okay. And then, if the stocks go below 45 days but higher than 30, we cut the ration in half. Below 30 days, we declare an emergency where only critical activities would be allowed to operate. But those were the conditions before. Kasi nung panahon po, kaya mas mataas yung mga inventory requirement, mas konti yung players, mas konti yung gasolinahan. Kaya po nag-strategize din tayo, I guess, kasi sa kinahaba-haba ng history natin, yung mga Congress natin, nag-design din ng oil deregulation law kasi yung risk binibigay natin sa private sector, kailangan meron kayong negosyo dyan na palawakin, padamihin yung network on your own. Kanya-kanya kayong kayod dyan, ito yung rules. Pero yung rules naman, nakalagay lang, DOE shall monitor and publish daily international crude oil price and follow movements of domestic oil prices. Parang ganun lang po yung nandoon sa sa price. Pero nandun po na-maintain yung power sa BP 33, Batas Pambansa 33, na yung quantity and quality is still regulated. The deregulation is to the price, and it gives the leeway for the business sector to invest, whether you want to build a refinery or you have to have a company-owned or dealer-owned. Kanya-kanya po sila ng network na ginagawa. So ganun po yun. I believe that was the journey. And now this one, we may have to be somewhere in the middle in certain circumstances. Thank you very much po.
Thank you, Yusek Capitabella. Siguro my concern is just like kay Chairman Wid during the first hearing. Ang worry natin dito yung replenishment no? Yung pag-supply, yun yung very critical, no? Just like to ask the stakeholders, to pong malalaking corporation, are you also trying to helping the government agencies, in particular DOE, in trying to source, naghahanap na rin po kayo ng alternatives, no? Aside from the Middle East. Kasi nga po, talagang problematic yung Strait of Hormuz. So, are there any developments doon sa paghanap natin ng alternative sources to replenish our supplies? And siguro quickly lang po doon sa mga stakeholders, sa mga kayo po, Ms. Lorely Osal, probably Mr. Luposena, and Mr. Ferrer.
Yeah, so we source our products through CIATCO, so it's our global trading network. Because it's a global trading network, then we're looking all around the world. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are molecules around, but it's the price as well that you have to contend with, because the price are very elevated. I think I also mentioned that there is a proposal which we are discussing with the DOE when it comes to aligning Philippine national standards with other countries. Because if we align with other countries, making some adjustments on PNS, then that opens up more sources for products you could bring into the country.
I think probably sa Petron and Sir Ferrer, whoever can answer sa stakeholders. Any leeway, any development on our possible alternative sources to replenish our buffer stock?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm representing the Philippine Chamber of Commerce. I'll answer your question, Senator. You know, when the war started, or when the conflict started, there was a lot of clamor within our business, our community. You know, madaming kinabahan agad, especially when the price jumped. So what we did in the chamber is, activated our international partnerships. So to answer your questions, we did find alternative, non-traditional sources of crude, diesel, and other products. So that is available. We've been discussing it earlier if the committee wants. But we just two sources, non-traditional fuel products. So diretso yan sa as far as I know, wala dito yung mga middle na tao. So hopefully it can help. But today I was listening to Senator Marcoleta, yung sinabi na price. That's music to our ears dito sa chamber, because if we can, it might be silver bullet now. Of course, I'm not an expert, but if it is really, we can drop it down to 55, it solves a lot of problema dito, Senator. And I was speaking with my neighbors here. I'm surrounded by oil companies. Pag na-confirm yung source ni Senator Marcoleta, Senator, bibili daw sila. They're committed to buy it at that price.
Sir, this. But during mediation, I think basically walang hindi man lang nasabihan yung agency na bawal yan. So I don't know if there are more scenarios of this, but to give our OFWs or aspiring OFWs the freedom of choice, especially since wala pa pong total deployment ban naman in those areas, sana may freedom of choice sila to back out kasi buhay naman nila yung nakataya doon. At the end of the day, kung magkaroon ng problema or crisis in that situation at may endanger ang buhay nila, sila lang naman yung makakaramdam ng consequence na yun. So sana very clear yung policy on
Just
that.
to clarify, that incident happened after the bombings already? After
Ano po sila, dapat po i-deploy pa lang siya.
Kaya nga.
So yes
Pero
po.
pumutok na yung...
Yes po. So dahil po yung reason kung ba't ayaw niya nang pumunta is because the family decided na they don't wanna take that risk.
Exactly.
Oo. So, yun po, parang sa mediation, I'm verifying, I'm trying to check sino yung kinausap sa DMW because for me, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, it's a no-brainer. If they don't wanna go, they shouldn't have to pay. But apparently, during mediation, ang feedback po sa akin is, parang hindi naman sa pinanigan yung agency but also hindi na pagsabihan yung agency na no, you can't hold that OFW's passport hostage, and you also cannot demand that you be repaid for whatever business cost was borne to you.
Force majeure is already a ground to, to rescind contracts. Ba't ka pupunta ron? Binobomba na nga. Di ba binomba na yung Kuwait? Oh. Yes.
Yun po. Salamat po.
Nandito ba yung DM? Oh, how do you respond to that?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and to my dear colleagues. Yes, the DMW employs a whole-of-government approach in adapting to the situation, especially addressing all the concerns of our beloved OFWs in the Middle East. No? In fact, at the very start of this crisis, our secretary already contacted all the GCC MWOs. No? We had a Zoom meeting and we responded immediately to the plight of our OFWs. First things first is, of course, their safety. So ang sinabi po natin, we have to hear what the host government advises. And if the host government says, shelter in place, then we do that. We implement that. The direction of the policy now is to take them away from harm's way. No? Kailangan po mailayo natin sila sa disgrasya at yung gusto pong umuwi, especially those who are stranded, kinakailangan tulungan. So yun po ang ginagawa natin. On-site country assistance is very important. So we give food, shelter to those who need, and syempre yung cash assistance pag kinakailangan po. No? And in addition to this, yung ating efforts to evacuate those who needs to be evacuated and to be repatriated back to the Philippines, yan po yung inuuna natin. In fact, because of airspace closure and non-availability of commercial flights, yung aming MW po adopted a ground cross-boarding para makapunta doon sa mga lugar na merong available na air flights. Kung wala naman, we already did some chartered flights. No? So yun po yung mga ginawa ng DMW. In fact, sa data po namin, allow me to read, no? Meron na po tayong 1,900 repatriates. We successfully brought them here to the Philippines. At 1,439 po yung OFWs noon and 461 yung dependents. These are the government-led efforts, no? Out of the total 2,651 with all the efforts exerted by other agencies like DFA.
But what about this particular case na yung DMW, ini-expatriate, inuuwi na rito, yun namang isa, hindi, kailangan mong pumunta ron. Ba't nagkaganon? And maybe, how does that work?
The advice that the DMW gave to our deploying agencies is that they should, at best, not deploy their workers. No, yun po yung ating ibinigay advice. Kahit na walang alert level, no? We depend on the alert level imposed by the DFA, but kahit po walang alert level, our advice is that do not deploy our workers until the situation normalizes. No? Yun po yung ginagawa po
Well,
natin.
apparently, something fell, through the cracks and pinadala pa rin. Maybe, Yusek, you can look into that situation.
Yes.
And yung mediation, which is under the DMW, di ba? Dapat siguro i-check ninyo ba't nagkaganon, no?
Yes, we will do that. We will do that. No? Pagdating naman po sa seafarers po natin, we already issued the right policy. No? We adopted the IBF policy that some areas in the Gulf and the the Oman Gulf are declared warlike and high-risk areas. And because of this, the right to refuse to sail of our seafarers are observed and respected. No? Hindi po natin pinapayagan na mag-crew change doon sa mga ports where their safety will be compromised. So ang ating pong suggestion and advice is that i-effect ang crew change doon sa safe na port. So as of now po, marami po tayong minomonitor, 7,000, right? The figure is right, but we are in close coordination with all our manning and recruitment agencies to ensure the safety and guarantee the well-being of our workers.
Yusek, just to continue the questions of Senator Pangilinan, anong official policy natin ngayon insofar as deployment is concerned? Meron ba tayong deployment ban to those conflict areas? Ano ba yung mga conflict areas? And then meron ba tayong deployment ban to the greater Middle East? Kasi I agree with Senator Kiko, nagpapabalik tayo ng tao o mayroon tayong repatriation. And alam ko, napakahirap yung repatriation. Logistically, financially, of course, organizing it is a challenge. But at the same time, we're deploying at mayroon mga balita na pinapuwersa pa i-deploy or else babayaran ng magbabayad yung pamilya ng 11,000. So parang dinideploy mo siya sa war zone. No? So what is the official policy of DMW insofar as deployment is concerned?
We always implement what the DFA alert level crisis is. Sa ngayon po, ang alert level crisis lang ay Israel, which is alert level 2. Iran is also alert level 2. Lebanon is alert level 3. And the rest, yung sa GCC po natin, wala pong alert level. And therefore, kahit wala siyang alert level, we do not encourage the deployment of our OFWs there. First, because may stranded lang po sila. Wala pong flights ngayon doon. Pangalawa, yung safety nila. And number 3, we ensure that their employment is there just waiting for the right time para mag-normalize po lahat. So tumutulong po yung mga agencies natin to contact the foreign employers and inform them that the OFWs are willing to join the employment, kaya lang po wala po talagang masasakyan.
In this case, yung kababayan natin is pupunta siya sa Kuwait. Since Kuwait is not in that list of high alert levels, pwede siyang i-deploy technically, tama?
Yes, but we do not encourage
of the
Passive.
Oo, parang passive siya. At it's to the option pa rin nung manning agency to deploy or not deploy. Kasi wala namang ban eh. You're not encouraging, but wala namang ban. No?
Yeah, technically, that's right po, Mr. Chair. No? Sa seafarers po natin, walang problema. Because they can fly out, hindi po pupunta sa Middle East and then join their crew kung saan mag-e-effect ng crew change. Ang problema lang natin, yung land-based sa GCC.
But is there a, sabi nga ni Senator Kiko, force majeure na eh. No? Kuwait might not be in that list, but of course, the greater region is at risk right now. Nakikita naman natin yung first day, even Dubai, diba? Binagsakan ng bomba. So, sa ganun, ayaw na pumunta nung kababayan natin, pero pinapabayad pa siya ng 11,000. Dapat hindi ganun. Kasi nga, yung buong greater region is at risk right now. Wala man lang siya doon sa list, pero alam natin that can escalate anytime soon.
And there are publicly declared threats of attack. Diba? Wherever the US facilities are, they are now, targets. Potential targets, and this has been publicly pronounced. So with such public pronouncements, should not the DMW be proactive and more active and more aggressive and just say, in these areas where Iran has threatened the attack, of course, di ba? Hindi na pwede. Kung mangyari bukas, di ba? Mag-escalate. We don't know. It's so fluid.
Mr. Chair, we do not allow the deployment and we do not issue OEC now. Yun po ang policy namin. Very clear po. We do not issue OEC for our HSWs, for example, going to the Middle East.
So ngayon wala.
Wala po talaga.
For
Opo.
example, yung kababayan natin pupunta sa Kuwait, in that case, since hindi naman kayo mag-issue ng OEC, force majeure rin siya.
Exactly.
So dapat hindi niya siya singilin nung kanyang yung 11,000, and I heard ng passport yata maho-hostage. Pwede ba yun i-hostage? Dapat bawal
Exactly.
That's a human rights violation to hostage a passport.
Ito po siguro, Mr. Chair, ito yung before the crisis erupts, meron pong mga OEC na na-issue eh. So na-stranded lang po sila because the effectivity of the OEC is 60 days, no? So nakapag-issue po noon prior to the crisis, kaya na-stranded. Kaya yung mga na-stranded po na tilungan natin, mahigit 1,000 po yan, inuwi na po natin sa kanilang probinsya through the intervention of the OWA. No? Tinulungan na po natin at ang sabi natin sa kanila, huwag muna silang pupunta mag-join doon sa employment nila sa GCC. And we informed the employers already.
Clear that right now, I don't know if I'm going to use the right term, but there is a deployment ban including Kuwait because you're not issuing OEC, diba? And that is the document that they need before they can leave the country, tama?
Yeah.
So
Unofficially po, yeah.
So
Correct.
unofficially, you're not.
Yeah.
There's no officially there's no ban, but you're not issuing OEC.
Exactly.
So hindi rin nila makakalabas.
Hindi po. Tama
So in
po.
the case of yung kababayan natin, dapat very clear ang policy na kung hindi naman mag-i-issue ng OEC, that's tantamount to force majeure. Wag nang pabalikin wag naman isingilin yung 11,000. No? Baka pwedeng i-delay na lang until, hindi naman natin sinasabi na forever yan eh. No, para humupa lang yung sitwasyon, and pag humupa na yung sitwasyon, then pwede na siyang i-deploy. But ang punto ko, wag pwersahin i-deploy, wag rin pwersahin na ibalik yung ibinayad na. No? And that should be communicated very clearly. Kasi ngayon, times of confusion eh. Maraming, lalo na ang mga OFWs natin, punta, balik, and then nagbabago yung sitwasyon on the ground. Dapat very clear ang communication ng DMW to our OFWs. No? I think there's a communication gap in that sense. No?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We will get the details and we will assist the OFW and inform the agency that it is to the best interest of the worker to stay in the Philippines at wag pong pagbayarin talaga.
Go ahead, Ms. Oplen. Maganda yung mga information sinishare mo. Kasi this is the objective of the committee to improve communication, find solutions, lalo na communication. Ngayon, ang bilis kasi ng pagbabago on the ground. No? Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to thank Yusek Olalia for at least the clarification of the policy. I agree with you po, Mr. Chair, na sana ma-communicate not just to the DMW regional offices na yun yung policy, but also to the agencies na yun din yung policy so that they will not feel the need, kumbaga yung case na to remains isolated. Yun po. Tapos po, Yusek Olalia, I'll approach you for the details. Thank you so much.
Okay na, ma'am. But thank you. Thank you for giving us a preview or a view of the plight of our OFWs. Yun kasi ang napaka taas sa agenda ng committee to make sure that our OFWs are safe coming back home and hindi natin papadala sila sa mga areas na alam natin delikado. Katulad nga ng sinabi ni Senator Kiko, identified naman yung mga areas lalo na kung may US base doon. Diba, yun ang tina-target. And I don't think it's a good idea right now to deploy massively OFWs in that area kasi the situation is really very fluid and changing every hour. No? Kaya maging prudent and conservative. No? Buhay kasi ang pinag-uusapan natin dyan. So next will be TUCP, Mr. Luis Coral.
Ako po si Carlo Oñate, spokesperson po ng TUCP. On behalf po ng Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, meron lang po kaming munting presentation na pinrovide po sa committee para makatulong. So ang context lang po habang siniseta po siguro yung presentation, no? Last week pa po, no, isa yung TUCP sa mga unang nanawagan ho na magdeklara ng national emergency. to the point na actually minasama yun nga ni Yusek Claire Castro na tinawag niyang pananakot yun. Gayunpaman, no, ngayong meron na tayong national energy emergency, kaysa kami nung mga nagsasabing bakit parang bitin pa? Bakit hindi na lang state of national emergency para may mga available na kapangyarihan na pwedeng i-exercise ang gobyerno, lalo na speaking from the part ng mga manggagawa, lalo yung higit natin 5 milyon na minimum wage earners. Kasi mula noon, sinabi na natin kulang ang sweldo, lalo hong kulang ngayon. Biruin nyo, no, yung minimum wage, mamaya makita ho natin, ngayon no, dahil sa taas ng presyo ng diesel, ang halaga nyo nasa 3 hanggang 5 litro na lamang ng diesel ang arawang sweldo ng ating mga minimum wage earners. Kaya ito po yung hinihingi sana namin na 5-point response, especially para sa mga manggagawa. Tinatawag nga naming kapit. Kasi wala nang magawa yung ating mga kabayan kundi talagang kumapit, and then it is so disappointing lang. 4 weeks na po tayo dito sa Middle East conflict. The Department of Labor and Employment has not conducted a single consultation with the labor sector. And then, pagdating ho dun sa Executive Order number 110, Uplift Committee, ang unang letra nga dun, L, livelihood, hindi rin ho member ang Department of Labor and Employment sa Uplift Committee. At kahit kung ano pa mong crisis committee, parang wala hong sectoral representation para sa mga manggagawa. Ngayon po, no, isa-isain ko lang po yung sa kapit. No, letter K ho namin talaga, next slide, ay talaga pong kansilahin muna yung buwis sa langis, kuryente at pagkain. Ayaw po namin na i-reduce lang yung sa excise tax kasi 10 piso sa gasolina, 6 na piso sa diesel. Kung tatapyasin pa ho natin yan, 2 piso, 3 piso na lang sa diesel. Para ho magkaroon ng impact yan, kailangan suspendin muna ho natin yung excise tax. Pagdating po sa kuryente, matagal na po kami nagpapanukala na tanggalin na natin yung 12% VAT sa electricity. Ang 2001, merong EPIRA, Affordable, Reliable Energy. Pagdating ho ng 2005, sinama sa VAT yung kuryente. Ngayon, no, kung tatanggalin ho natin yung VAT sa kuryente, ang matitipid doon, ang kumukonsumo ng 200 kilowatts per hour, nasa 300 pesos. Ang amin pong pag-aaral, sinusuportahan din ho ito ng business community. Ngayon, no, narinig ho namin yung Energy Regulatory Commission. Sabi niya, pagdating ng April, 4 to 5 pesos ang dagdag per kilowatt hour. Sa 200 kilowatt per hour ho, naglalaro sa 800 to 1,000 pesos na dagdag po sa monthly bill. Kaya kaysa po kami lahat na nag-urge, no, tanggalin po yung VAT sa kuryente, pati na ho yung sa pagkain. No? Wala kaming nakikita hong rason. Nagbubuwis buhay na yung ating mga kababayang manggagawa para makabiyahe, makatrabaho, may mauwi sa pamilya, binubuwisan pa ng pamahalaan lalo sa panahon ho ngayon. No? Yung sumunod do, yung letter A namin, yung agapan ang presyo. No? Ito ho sana yung hiningi nga namin dun sa state of national emergency. Kasi kung state of national emergency ang idineklara, automatic, kagaya yung Price Act, automatic yung price control, price ceiling mechanisms na meron ho tayo. Ngayon, kahit basahin ho natin yung sa Executive Order number 110, wala hong malinaw kasi doon ano ho yung magiging management ng price. Ganun din ho yung sa Oil Deregulation Law nga ho, yung Section 14E. Hindi naman ho kailangan diretso na take over, pwede ho i-direct yung operations. So, i-direct operations, pwede mag-request ng more information from the gas companies and then to limit, to set a price ceiling. Dahil karamihan nun, lalo yung malalaking gas companies, just February, no, bago nagkaroon ng Middle East crisis, pinagmamalaki yung double-digit earnings growth, halos doblado ang kita ng ibang malalaking gas corporation. Ngayon ho na may krisis, sana ho, sumama rin ho sila, may ambag din sila dito sa sakripisyo na ito. No? Yung sumunod do, yung patasin yung sweldo, ito ho yung numero ngayon. Ang ating mga manggagawang minimum ho sa BARM ay nasa 411 pesos lang po ang sweldo nila kada araw. Pinakamataas na ho sa NCR na 695 pesos. Sa amin nung tansya, no, halos lahat ng region except lang sa Metro Manila ang nasa below poverty threshold. So kung wala ho tayong mabibigay na aumento dahil tingin ho namin parang natutulog pa yung ating regional wage board na yun yung existing mechanism natin, kahit yata may emergency na malinaw na supervening event, wala rin hong pinapatawag na public consultations kasi nagtatago sila dun sa barya-baryang wage order na hindi pwedeng magalaw na isang taon unless may supervening event. Kaya isa rin sa panawagan namin, baka napapanahon kung sakaling magkaroon ng special session ang Kongreso at Senado ay tignan na option, special session, maisama yung legislated wage increase na ipinasa rin ho, kagaya ho ng Senado, last year din ho. Kung kinakailangan ho noon, lalong kinakailangan ngayon ng aumento sa sweldo. Next slide. Gayun pa man po, no, batid ho namin na syempre may mga deliberasyon pa hong magaganap dyan. Kaya ang sinasabi ho naming proposal in the meantime ay sana ho mabigyan ho natin ng ayuda, subsidy, yung ating higit 5 milyon na minimum wage earners. Kahit na po 5,000 na lamang po, ipantay na lang ho natin sa fuel subsidy kasi yun ho ay equivalent sa, kasi kung 100 piso ho yung pinasa ng Senado na arawan, kung 22 work days, so that's 2,200 pesos, yung 5,000 po medyo equivalent sa 2 buwan na merong 100 pesos na daily wage increase. At nagpapatulong po kami sa Protect Committee na sana ho mahanapan din ho ng pondo kahit yung 25 billion ho kasi yung computation namin para dun sa initial implementation. Narinig naman ho natin yung 230 billion na available sa DBM, so roughly mga 10% ho ito. At kung kailangan hong mag-sustain, nagpo-propose din ho kami kahit executive order mula sa Pangulo na ginawa ho noon nung 1997 financial crisis, yung across the board cost savings sa mga non-essential expenditures ng lahat ng ahensya para makapool po tayo ng savings. Yung panghuli po namin ay yung pigilan muna ho yung bayad utang kasi ho yung SSS, GSIS, Pag-ibig, no? Every year ho, naririnig ho natin yan, mga trillion peso government financial institutions, malinaw naman na pong may kalamidad, no? Hindi lamang yung buong bansa, kundi bawat tahanan. So sana po mag-offer ulit na mga lower interest o zero interest calamity loans. And then yung loan monthly amortization payment, sana po wag munang singilin ngayong mga buwan na nasa loob tayo ng krisis. At kung sakaling magbalik na kailangan na magbayad, staggered. At sana itong mga ino-offer ng GFIs natin na sana magkaroon nga ng moratorium, sana sumunod yung mga ibang financial institutions kasi nagawa naman po ito nung pandemya. Sana po no, makonsidera rin at lalo pong kinakailangan ngayon. Yun po, no, yung final point lang namin is that merong kapangyarihan, merong pondo, maraming option, and then everyday po kasi na nag-aatubili tayo, na nagde-delay tayo ng action, napakarami hong manggagawa, napakarami hong pamilyang lumulubog sa utang at nagugutom, no? Kaya sabi namin, kapit yung pangalan ng aming 5-point proposal, pero syempre sa gobyerno, kailangan kumilos po kasi hindi ho natin alam kung hanggang kailan makakakapit yung ating mga kababayan. Maraming salamat po sa Senate Protect Committee. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you for that.
Sa gobyerno, kabig.
Sa gobyerno, kilos. Sa manggagawa, kapits. Oo. Iba naman yung sinabi mo.
Iba naman yung kabig.
We also have the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, represented by Mr. Rob Maronilia, or Attorney Rob.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Honorable Pangilinan. So, as an introduction, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines is the voice of the private sector, particularly on labor and employment issues. So today we live in uncertainty as to the far-reaching economic consequences of this conflict, such as causing inflation, raising production, and transport costs, all mentioned earlier. We respectfully urge that in addressing these pressures, policy responses must not place further burden on employers through mandated minimum wage hikes or additional labor costs.
Piktad yata yung...
Yun nga po, medyo natawa nga ako. Doing so will only aggravate business closures, job losses, and informalization of work. Precisely the outcomes we all seek to avoid. especially knowing that 99% of our enterprises belong to the MSMEs. So to put it into perspective, 9 out of 10 of our enterprises belong to micro in itself. So yung 9 out of 10 na yun, may hirapan na yun. In as much as we share the government's objective of protecting our workers, what we need today are measures that stabilize energy prices, reduce operating overhead, and sustain enterprise recovery so that businesses can survive and employment can be preserved. Yun lang po, Mr. Chairman. I know we're pressed for time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And lastly, we call on the Philippines.
And I think for Dr. Navarro's paper, I think we've discussed already several of the effects of the crisis, and let me just go through them. We discussed also earlier the issue of consumption squeeze, rising prices, reducing disposable income, leading to lower household consumption, which is amplified by the fact that consumption is still the primary driver of the Philippine GDP. We also discussed in cost push effects on firm. And earlier this morning, we also looked at the issues, the effects on different energy-intensive sectors, manufacturing, logistics, transport, reducing input costs, reduce output, lower profitability, and impacts on layoffs and hiring freezes. The vulnerability also of micro, small, and medium enterprises are very particularly vulnerable, especially transport and retail that are highly sensitive to fuel costs. The impacts on the OFWs, external labor, which also has a downside risk to remittances and account a significant share of an external inflows. And on the paper of Dr. Albert, he looked at some of the estimates of what the increases in oil prices will be on our poverty incidence, and that's what we want to submit. And according to his, which we'll submit to the committee, an 80% increase in oil prices will actually roll back any improvements that we've had, progress that we've had in terms of poverty reduction since in the past decade. So there are some estimates here. And I think there are certain points that we just want the committee, he wants the committee to consider. So first, the poverty impact of any sustained petroleum price shock is potentially large. So an 80% increase in petroleum input costs adds 3.7 percentage points in the National Poverty Headcount Index, using a simulation of current survey data. The burden falls hardest on rural households and the poorest income groups. So any assistance should actually be provided to those most affected regions, especially BARM, Region 9, Region 8, and also Region 12. Existing social protection programs actually provide the most efficient first line of defense. There are some suggestions on how to provide this assistance, and I think he's already working with the SWD already in discussing this. So the 4-piece delivery system could also provide a system to which our affected households will be could be provided assistance, and policy responses should be well targeted and time limited as well. So that is the submissions.
Thank you, Dr. Tuano. Senator Pangilinan, any questions? Or I'll start off with Dr. Tuano and also kay Mr. Sani Africa. We all know the effects of these oil prices. Dr. Tuano, you said 80% increase in oil prices will increase...
No, this is just looking at scenarios. So,
Yeah,
what if there's a 20% increase? So what is the effect on poverty incidence, 40, 60?
So yung kaninang sinabi, 20% increase in oil prices will increase poverty by
from 15.5 to 16.5 according to the paper of Dr. Albert.
3.7%.
No, if it's 80% increase in oil, if oil prices eventually increase.
But it's already increased by 115%.
Yes,
so-
tama.
Okay, so we expect more.
So kung
You'll have to adjust
80%
these
you
figures.
said is
3.7.
Yeah,
3.7. And what will be the most efficient policy response? I'll throw this to Dr. Tuano and Mr. Africa. What do you suggest to government as a policy response which is efficient and I would say the most cost effective? Because policy response transfers are costly also, no? Considering that our population is big. So based on your analysis and also on your research, what will be the most efficient and cost effective?
Well, according to Dr. Albert, it's really the existing social protection programs. We have already yung 4Ps already in place, and that can be used as a delivery mechanism, for providing cash assistance. So he has also some estimates, the peso estimates of how much this cash assistance will be if you want to cover only, for example, the food needs, the shortfall in food expenses of this household. There's some amount that he noted in his note. If it's going to be food plus transport assistance, there's also a certain amount. That's also he did look at. And also a comprehensive welfare restoration package for all.
Have you
groups.
computed how much do we need at this point? And first of all, are we at the point na kailangan na natin magbigay nitong mga interventions? Kasi if you notice, the policy response of government is to what they call petroleum-affected segments of our population. Ang DSWD at ang DOTR binibigyan ng mga POV drivers, binibigyan ng mga TNV drivers natin, but hindi pa tayo umaabot sa greater population natin, especially to the poor. Are we in that stage ready na dapat na tayo magbigay ng transfers?
Parang of course, parang the estimates that he has in his study, parang looks at what will be happen if eventually the petroleum price effects will also already kick in, in terms of food prices, So ito yung parang estimate in terms of what is the magnitude, in terms of food, and so on. So these numbers, are based on what if the full effect of these increases, are being faced by the consumers.
I'm looking at the government's responses. Parang we're trying to put a lid on inflation, di ba? Nagbigay tayo ng discount sa tollways, nagbigay tayo ng discount sa port areas natin for logistics, nagbigay tayo ng ng subsidy to logistics drivers, also to TNVS drivers, trying para hindi siya kumalat to other products, or to other basic commodities. So, ang gusto kong matanong is hanggang kailan natin kayang isuppress itong inflation, Because we're trying to suppress it, And how long can we do that? And then I want to ask also si Mr. Africa, nasa point na ba tayo, Mr. Africa, that we need to give broader subsidies to the general population? Are we in that point already, or kaya pa natin isuppress? I think the government is suppressing it. Hopefully na everything will be okay in the Middle East and everything will go back to normal and it will not spread through the other basic commodities. So tanong ko, are we in that point already that we need to give broader transfers or broader assistance to our population?
Kaya actually sinimplify namin yung presentation. Wala na pong magagawa eh. It's so straightforward. Half our energy consumption comes from oil. 99% of our oil is imported. Kung mag-increase na ng 50% or 80%, it's there na. So para sa amin, kaya natatawa ako kayo noong umaga nung bine-berate yung nagko-comment na isang linggo pa bago magpulo yung uplift. it is time na. At sa amin, that's why it's so important to start from, you're talking about almost 18 million Filipino families. Wala pa yung crisis. Distressed na sila. So sa amin, kaya ganun ka straightforward yung presentation namin. There's so many things to talk about in pricing, the profits, transmission channels, so many things to talk about yung revenue implications, etc. Pero huwag tayo maligaw. The most important thing is 18 million Filipinos were in difficult circumstances before the attack. And they're the 18 million Filipinos right now in difficult circumstances na. Of course, yung spear tip niyan, yung transport groups. It's about 2.2 million, counting the tricycle drivers, etc., etc. Next round dyan, syempre yung mga mangisda or whoever else na nakasalali sa bangka, yung hanap buhay. Third round, sabi nga ng NEDA, yung consumers na. So there's no point thinking we can stop the inflation. Imposible because super rough figure lang yung 500 billion estimate namin. That's there, that will be passed through. So yung policy choice ng government is not stop the inflation. Ang policy choice ng government, who will bear the burden of adjusting. At hindi pwedeng market-determined adjustment. Kaya medyo masakit sa tenga namin pinag-usapan, the market dictates ganito. Ang problema, the market dictated na mahirap at naghihirap ang 18 million Filipino families. Kung market na magdidikta kung paano mag-a-adjust dyan, ibig sabihin dyan, papabayaan ng gobyerno yung mayorya ng pamilyang Pilipino, mag-adjust kayo, resilient naman kayo eh. So para sa amin, it's that straightforward talaga. You have a 500 billion peso burden, who bears it? And we argue, part of the burden should be borne by the oil companies, lalo na hindi binanggit na nagyabang ng record profits noong January lamang. Dumoble daw ang tubo niya. Kami, may key point kami doon. Gusto nga tanongin sa DOE. Baka mali ang datos namin. Dubai crude was $82 per barrel in January 2025. It dropped 25% to $62 per barrel in December. Yung diesel stayed at 58 pesos. So mag-isip ka, yung nabanggit ni Senator Marcoleta, yung feather, para yung rocket feather. Sa amin last year lamang, super feather. 25% drop in Dubai crude, no change in diesel from the only refiner, well, Petron, obviously, from the only firm refining products. Magtataka ka. So sa amin, first line of adjusting to the burden, yung mga kumikita na malaki, which is the oil firms. But yun nga, what is reasonable, yun ang problema eh. If reasonable is defined as standard profitability, that means they will price passing on yung burden. At yun ang point eh. Ang kalaban natin dito, hindi lang yung abusive, profiteering, hoarding. Yun talaga super nakakainis, mga galit tayo doon. Pero even taking away the hoarding, profiteering, may problema kung iti-take as a given yung profits. So sa amin, we argue that's where the price control, the price fees comes in. Doon pwede mag-negotiate. O sige, how much of a cut in profits can you take? Kasi this is part of your nation building. Carry some of the burden. Don't pass it through. So dun sa tanong, is it time to intervene? Definitely. Kaya ang laki ng problema namin dun sa EO 110, lalo yung provision na sinabi, will rely on existing appropriations. That budget was drawn up in 2025. That budget will have been spent anyway in 2026. So, ang kailangan ngayon, new and additional funding. So kung tatlaliin ng EO, because nga, ngayon ko lang nalaman, hindi pala totoong national emergency ang national energy emergency. Kung tataliin ng EO, yung kami ng gobyerno, to pursue other revenue sources, like it did nung COVID, mobilize dividends, declare savings, at iba pa, if the government says, as a matter of principle, hindi, existing appropriations lang tayo, yung nabanggit ni Senator Pangilinan kanina, multiply the problem sa 500 million pesos, kulang yon. Multiply the problem, anong biggest transport groups, kulang yan. Multiply the problem, anong support sa mga isda, kulang yan. Multiply the problem, anong bigay na support sa mga naghihirap ng mga pamilya, maging kulang yan. And yung pinaka-biggest danger sa atin dito ngayon, marami sa publiko, hindi alam yung context. Alam nila yung kahirapan nila, hindi nila alam yung context. Kung mag-a-announce yung government, may tutulungan kaming ganito. Ang pinakatulong sa amin, tinutulungan ba ang lahat na nangangailangan? Hindi. Binibigyan ba ng sapat na tulong na kinakailangan ng mga yan? Even yung kakarampot na tinutulungan? Hindi din. Binibigyan ba sila ng tulong sa buong panahon na kailangan nila? Hindi din. At kung hindi gawin ng gobyerno, magbigay ng sapat na ayuda sa lahat na nangangailangan, sa buong panahon na kailangan nila, ang de facto policy choice doon is hinayaan yung mayorya na umangkop sa bigat ng krisis habang pinipreserba yung pricing and the reasonable profits and all of that ng mga large firms. At sa amin, pet peeve talaga namin, yung billionaire wealth tax that is so reasonable. Barya lang yon. Small example lang of how it's so reasonable. Mas malaki pa yung binagsak ng stock market in the last 3 weeks than makukuha from the billionaire wealth tax in 1 year. So sa amin, it's a no-brainer. It's such a small 1-3% on wealth over 1-3 billion. Even for the richest Filipino na halos trilyonaryo niya, he'll end up paying less than 6% kasi naka-stagger nga yun. Kung may investment siya sa stock market, he would have lost 10% in just the last 3 weeks. So sa amin, it's just, the government can decide who bears the burden. If it doesn't decide to give ample support subsidies, including tax relief, habang financing that with a tax on those who can afford it, kaya ang stress namin in 2 slides yung inequality, ang de facto choice doon, hindi mo sinasabi, ang praktika nun, bahala na umangkop sa bigat ng krisis ng ordinaryong Pilipino na walang-wala na to begin with. Ngayon na po yung panahon sa amin.
Thank you for those responses. I've been reading about in other jurisdictions, I think primarily sa UK, they're talking about windfall tax. No? Because definitely may mga malalaking kikita dito sa situation na ito. In any crisis naman may kumikita, lalo na commodities. No? And like I said, commodity traders know that situations like this, once in a blue moon, and you take advantage of that. No? But of course, in taking advantage, maraming humihirap, lalo na sa bansa natin. So, do you think a policy response later on, no, from the legislature can be in a form of a windfall tax, no, that can be reallocated to, let's say, sa mga constituents natin, sa mga cash transfers na ibibigay natin. Is that something that can be explored?
Also, parang given this crisis, we have to also think about, not only in short term, but also medium and long term. So, yeah, that can be one of the policy options that can be parang considered. Yeah.
Si Chair, ang limitation sa windfall tax, dadaan ka sa audit cycle yung pag-declare and everything. Matagal na din namin pinopropose, kailangan may windfall property tax actually ng gobyerno. If the government builds a road, a railway, a station, tapos nakita na yan yung binili na lupa na 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pesos per square meter, dahil may kasada na, dahil may stasyon na, making 15, 20, 25,000, kailangan talaga sa amin yung windfall property tax standing requirement yun. In this particular case, makakatulong din yun, but of course, without waiting for the cycle na next year pa yan masisingil when all the money comes in. Kaya para sa amin, yung kailangan medyo pilitin talaga yung notion ng billionaire wealth tax. Kahit i-package siya as a one-off emergency measure. Kasi unang-una, maraming readily available information na we know actually who the billionaires are. We know their investments. We know what may beneficial ownership na Ni-report na sa SEC. We know ano yung mga corporations na may controlling stakes sila. We should know through the Bangko Sentral, MLC, kano kalaki yung mga bank deposits nila. Theoretically, we should also know, parang ginawa kay Zaldico, ano yung mga high-value assets, property nila. So yun, without creating a new system to identify wealth, hindi pa siya perfect, it won't capture all the wealth yet, Pero even sa unang pasada, makakalikha yung kaagad eh. Ang problem lang doon, yung the legislative cycle syempre. But yun nga, sa amin, ito yung moment eh. Grabe talaga yung crisis. Grabe talaga yung pangailangan ng marami. At grabe din yung potential na pwedeng likain from 3,000 billionaires. Kung gusto nga maging mas mahigpit, di sabihin mo, hindi lang pwedeng billionaire, dapat 2 billion na meron or 3 billion. I mean, you can narrow the target. Pero the information is readily available. Kahit sino mag-Google, madili ma-generate yan or may access sa Bloomberg. Ikalawa, it is an emergency. It can help overcome any legal challenges because nga emergency eh. Kasi earmark na lang. Dapat sa magasaka mga isda, dapat sa labor groups, dapat sa transport groups, dapat sa cash support. Tapos, well, yung medyo makunat na cycle sa Congress, the President can give a political push to it kasi kailangan ngayon eh. So, I mean, it's something that should be considered more. At if anything, yung nangyayari ngayon, just 6 years after COVID, it affirms. Dati pa dapat may ganyan. Ngayon, okay, naghahabol tayo uli. But let's push for it now kasi for sure magkakakrahis uli. Hopefully not in another 5 years. But, di ba, magsusubi na tayo ng mga mekanismo ngayon eh. So we think medyo kailangan din pag-isipan kasi yung biggest shift na kinakailangan tingin namin, kung mawala yung gobyerno sa pag-iisip na ang gagawin natin yung madali gawin. Ang dapat starting point natin, hindi ano yung madali gawin, kundi ano yung dapat gawin. Tapos, work downwards from there, di ba? So at least medyo kumataas yung ambition, sana mas marami magagawa imbis na start from, ay, may limitation dito, walang pondo, walang hirap, walang kahirapan, etc. Medyo, we want to sort of shift that narrative on its head.
Thank you for that. I'll jump to another topic, the Philippine Council for Agriculture and Fisheries. Meron ba tayong computation on the effect of this rising fuel cost to our mga basic agricultural products? No? Do we have a computation on that? But
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, we don't have that data. We only conduct consultations and we only receive reports. Currently, we are conducting consultations on various commodities and yung nauuna pong nag-raise na mga issues are the rice sectors and the poultry and livestock sectors. So for the rice and the meat sector, ito po yung kanilang mga concern na wag naman po yung babaan, especially yung mga tariffs imposed on the importation of these products. Yun po yung mga concern. But for the exact figures, we can report that next meeting. We can
you share with us yung mga consultation nyo with?
Yes, we will report that.
Do you have? Can you share with us?
We
now yung mga ano nyo consultations, ano yung mga feedbacks from the different sectors so that we can include that in our report.
Yes po. The output of our consultations are policy resolutions po. So we can provide a report on that next meeting. Thank you. We can submit that sa Senate then. Siguro next week na po.
Ngayon, do you have anything that you can share with the committee so that we can discuss it? Your group conducts consultations with different. Ano yung mga naririnig yung
especially yung mga issues that also raised by the different agencies. We have 13 national sectoral committees, such as the fisheries and aquaculture, poultry, livestock, corn, and feed crops. So we conduct quarterly consultations. So, ano lang po, pwede pong next meeting we can submit, or we can submit in next week po a report on the output of our consultations.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you po.
Si Danny Fausto is PICAF president, is that right?
CAFI po,
That's the,
an
another,
organization.
yeah. No, well, we were conferring with a number of stakeholders sa agri sector. No, immediately, I think what government should be able to do in terms of support for our food producers is to buy from them. They have, yung Sagip Saka Act na if you want to secure the incomes of your farmers and fisherfolk and that they keep planting and that they may tide over itong challenge ng economic hardship, no, and the fuel prices, etc., is to have a market for their produce. Apart from yung subsidy, diba, fuel subsidy, etc., na dapat dagdagan, yung huli nila, yung ani nila, dapat ang gobyerno, lahat ng ahensya ng pamahalaan, bumili direkta through the Republic Act 11321 na walang public bidding. That way, and these are already appropriated amounts for DepEd has 25 billion pesos worth of school feeding programs. Both the purchase of rice, whether retail or food, whether raw materials, meaning bigas, or packed, ang DSWD is about 17 billion. That doesn't include their hot meals program, which is about 9 billion. The milk feeding program is about almost 3 billion. So all these are government appropriations. The jails, the hospitals. So baka pwede nyong in your consultations and then with the various stakeholders agri and fishery sector is and get, of course, and I will do my share as chairman of the Committee on Agriculture as to how to tweak itong programang ito, yung batas, to address itong ang current crisis natin.
Mr. Chair, we are expanding also our targets for consultations. Actually, we are part in the implementation of the Sagip Saka program.
In fact, LGUs, for example, yung rice subsidy, yung rice LGSF, 23 billion worth of financial assistance to LGUs directly. Each LGU has about 10 million pesos worth of budget to buy rice. And we relayed, and it was incorporated by the Secretary of, Executive Secretary, na yung 10 million na yun, ang first crack dapat dun, where supply is available by rice farmers, bilhin direkta sa kanila. Secondary na lang yung mga trader. So that's 23 billion na mababalik direkta at tamang presyo para sa mga rice farmer. So that's income immediately. And hopefully, the increase in their incomes will help tide them over given itong inflation, given itong challenges of fuel costs rising. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Provide us information and understand your organization's in charge of doing consultations. Kailangan namin ng suggestions on how to address the impact of this rising fuel cost to the different agricultural industries. No?
Noted po, sir. We will submit next week. Thank you po.
Thank you. And to ECOP, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, aling mga business sectors or business industries ang tinamaan as we speak, because of this rising fuel cost? Kanina narinig ko sa DTI that some of the manufacturers are holding off yung kanilang increase. Pero ano bang mga business sectors ang talagang immediately na feel nila itong pagtaas ng presyo and immediately nagkaroon ng problema sa kanilang operations? I was sharing to Senator Kiko kanina, this morning I was talking to some real estate developers and they were telling me na yung delivery ng aggregates, delivery ng hollow block, semento, kaagad na feel nila yung increase doon sa presyo. No? So nakikita na natin na mayroon ng ganitong spillover to some of the business industries. So based on your consultation with your members, ano na ba yung mga industries na kaagad tinamaan nitong pagtaas ng presyo?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've conducted the survey and the survey is not yet final, but we can submit that to you maybe within the next 2 days. But
Initial consultation na ba kayong ginawa?
just a survey.
Okay.
With that survey, we have a few main questions. Kasi po mahirap nahirapan kami mag-consult with everyone. So what we did was conduct a survey with major and general questions that from there we would already know what to report to you, Mr.
Ano
Chairman.
bang mga businesses na may threat of, let's say, closure or suspension of operations because of this increase in prices of oil? Meron na bang ganun kayong nakikita or hindi muna mag-expand? May mga ganyan na bang
Yeah,
conversation in your group?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's why our position was focused on the minimum wage hike because all of our members, as of now, yun lang po ang number one concern nila. It's the minimum wage hike. That's the
Yeah, but
number one.
hindi sila
concern.
concerned sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis?
No, they are, but for the policy response
Kasi
of the
minimum wage
government.
hike, medyo matagal na usapan pa yan. No?
Yeah.
I know TUCP is lobbying, but of course, maraming push and pull yan sa tug of war. But the price of oil, walang tug of war yan. Talagang papasa sa atin eh. No? So I just want to understand from the business sector, kung meron na bang, let's say, their operations are affected, they had to downscale, they had to retrench, may mga ganun na bang...
So Mr. Chairman, to make it easier, if the battle cry of TUCP is cap it, maybe I'll put it into maybe the battle cry of the employers is status quo. Yun po ang gusto ng employers for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll jump to back to government, to ERC, to Attorney Buela. I saw this press release